Happy Wednesday. Well, as you can see, I have another special guest. It's been a couple weeks since I've done this, but I really want to do more and more of these. And my guest, who you'll meet in a second, very graciously decided to do this last minute on the birthday of The Divided Man, my second book, which is pretty exciting. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and who you are, what you write, and we'll go from there.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Wiebe. I write a grimdark fantasy. It's called the Severance Trilogy. Got two books out right now, Blades of the Night and Shadow of Malignant, and a prequel called The Shield. And, I'm happy to be here on this Wednesday and on the year God,
Getting
year
choked up.
anniversary. Man, yeah.
Very emotional. I mean, it is the Divided Man's birthday, and I know
Yeah.
I had a good cry before, so I
Yeah,
appreciate you sharing it because you just read it recently, which we'll talk about later.
I did. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean, actually, for those of you that watched my interview with Haley, I said back I had her explain what grimdark is, and I also said I myself had never read it before Haley and your books, Danny,
Mhm.
because I think yeah, it started with your second one. You were looking for arc readers, and I threw my hat in the ring, which then mean which meant I had to binge on your first book. So I read them both pretty quickly, and I was introduced to a whole genre I had never read before, and I really enjoyed it. But how about in your words? How would you define grimdark for those that have no idea what we're talking about?
Yeah. So, as the word implies, I look at it as books that are both grim in theme and dark in setting. So usually for me that means they're kind of, as far as fantasy, they're still grounded in realism, whereas it's not everyone gets a happy ending. There's no like fairy tale like princesses. Everyone uh, when I write it, I try to keep everyone as realistic as possible. All my characters, I want them to have realistic, to make realistic decisions. When they do whatever situation they face, there's realistic consequences. And for for me, it's I don't know. There's dire straits usually in fantasy books, and a lot of times the heroes deal with it and they come out on top, and they're not really scarred for very long. But I like the idea of maybe like the main character might win, but he's gonna walk away with, you know, physical and mental trauma. Like I think that's pretty much it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't want to get into spoilers for your books because I think people that are watching this should go and get them because they're awesome. But I definitely will echo. I mean, you got heroes that they have obviously heroic qualities to them, but they get put through the ringer, and, um, which is yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, but it's also, in fact, your first book. Correct me if I'm wrong. Even has like like a warning in the beginning, like saying, "Do not." Expect things to go happily ever after here. Get your get your head right. This is going to be rough.
Yeah.
Did you do that like based on feedback, or you just really wanted to like be transparent to the user? Like, what made you put the warning in the first one? Because I don't think you have it in the second one.
No, it's uh I think I re-edited it, and I think instead of putting a dedication, I replaced it with that, just because I thought it was a fair warning, but also I thought it was kind of funny. Like, this book has
Yeah,
no happily ever afters, or I'll only give you one, so here it is. They lived happily ever after. And it's the first thing you read at the very beginning, and it's honest.
yeah. Um, so I think you kind of answered this to a degree, or maybe no. This is actually a question I wanted to ask. Was that how do you balance it being dark but not like hopeless. Like, I mean, I imagine like I don't know. You've probably read a lot of grimdark, and I don't know if you've read stuff that is like too much even for you. But I would imagine it's a balancing act.
It for probably to my detriment. I don't put a whole lot of thought into balancing it. I just that's a good question. I know it's very dark, and I guess I don't really try to balance the
You just kind of go with
despair
the
from
flow.
the hopeful. I go with it. I have it all, planned out how I want it to go in my head.
Yeah,
And again, it goes back to the realism. Like, yeah, these characters are gonna they're like you said, they're being put through the ringer, but being through some crazy stuff myself, like being it with military and firefighters and stuff, like sometimes we have rough shifts, but we make jokes. Sometimes it's not all,
right,
dark and despair. You still, you know, cut the crap with your friends and then you deal with the heavy stuff as it comes. So
right.
I guess there is some, as far as like the banter, with conversations and the characters, I try to keep some of that light. It's not always constantly talking about the darkest, the worst things that they have to do. It's just how you would talk to a friend going through that stuff with them.
Sure. Yeah, it's realistic. Um, well, as again, somebody that tends to like, I don't want to say happier reading, I mean, even though I tend to like things that end a little bit happier, I didn't think. I mean, there's parts of your stuff that get really dark, but I didn't feel like it was so much that it's like, oh my God, there is no hope in here. I mean, yeah, it's like the first book, there's some, it gets pretty heavy, but there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, even though it's very tiny in the distance. And then
Yeah.
the second book, I don't know, it kind of mixed things up for me. It's like you had like a little bit of a murder mystery in there and some other stuff. So I think,
Mhm.
I don't know, my outside looking in, having being one of your readers, is it seemed to strike a pretty good balance where it wasn't too much darkness.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good point. When I wrote my first book, I started it 11 years ago, and I was, obviously 11 years younger, and so I was like, oh, I want this to be dark and heavy. So
Yeah,
I think looking back, you can tell my first book is a lot darker and heavy and relentless than my second book. And the second book, I kind of almost give the reader, if they make it that far, a break, like a
yeah,
breather,
that's a great
you
word.
know.
That's exactly how I felt being like along for the ride. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, it started off kind of different. It almost feels like a, I don't want to say like a standard fantasy setting, but there's
yeah.
actually like a normal life going on to a degree other than a like a serial killer.
Yeah. I've kind of got the rhythm down. I think a little better. Like as a reader, I've some of like you, my fellow authors, have also said that you don't want the reader to be buffeted with hopelessness constantly because they don't really want that all the time. Even I love grimdark books, obviously, but
Yeah.
it is nice to have a break from it in them. And so I think that's what the second book kind of acts as, like the calm before the storm.
So speaking, you were talking about your first two books. As much as you're willing to talk about, you're knee deep in the third one, right? How's that been going?
Mhm. It's been going pretty good. Uh, I have it all written, the first draft, the very first one, and it's you can tell it's a first draft.
Oh, sure.
So I've I've been rewriting it, just taking one paragraph from the first draft, I copy it to a new document, and I rewrite that paragraph, and it's been coming along swimmingly, very good.
Awesome.
It's I'm pretty proud of it. I think it's going to be hopefully the best yet. I hope so.
I'm very excited about it. Yeah, and I know it's like if you're actually feeling pretty excited about the first draft, that's probably a good sign because it's like I'm going through that right now. I'm writing the first draft of my fourth book, and there are things that I'm like, holy crap, this needs a lot of help. But yet I'm overall happy, which tells me, okay, that's pretty good. Like,
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
remember when I wrote my second book, the first draft, I'm like, this sucks. Like, and then I wound up
Yeah.
changing a fair amount. But like, yeah, when you kind of feel like good this early on, that's
Hmm.
probably a good sign.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've learned a lot writing the first two books, and so I think it's going to show. And I think obviously anyone like you, I'm sure you've learned a lot writing your first 3, and so you're taking that
Oh
and
yeah. I keep
taking it
telling
to the
people
core.
that, like, with my first book I'm very proud of my first book. It's been well received, but it is a lesson to me on how not to do a first book, because I got super impatient at the end and I just like hit publish, and then I'm like, holy shit, what have I done?
Yeah,
And
sure.
and there's more typos than there should have been that I've since cleaned up to a degree, but it was like, yeah, I got so sick of the process. I just wanted to get over the hump, which maybe was good because I went my whole life not publishing, so maybe I
Mm.
just needed to get myself over that. But I would not recommend that to anybody watching this, to rush anything as the process.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
Like
guilty of the same thing.
like our wise friend Elizabeth Bush says, like it's kind of dumb for indie authors to just set arbitrary like timelines for yourself, like considering, like, what are you doing
Y-
it for? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
it's good to give
exactly.
yourself deadlines, but
Yeah.
what are we really rushing? It's like you're gonna probably get the same support whether you wait a little bit and get it right or not.
Yeah.
Why put yourself through that and
Hmm.
have a sloppy product?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is there anything else in your? I feel like I asked you this maybe on an Ask Me Anything recently, but like, beyond this, the Severance trilogy, is there
Mhm.
other things in your head swimming around that's gonna come next that you're gonna write?
Yeah, I've got a plan for my next my next series that's gonna take place within the same world I created in the Severance trilogy. Separate, obviously separate storylines, but in the same universe. And then I've also got uh, some plans for like a shorter series, well, like shorter novels, but a series that's going to be a massively different tone than the Severance trilogy. It's going to be very like lighthearted and more fun,
Nice.
kind of like whimsy almost. It's about like a more or less a time traveling hot air balloon.
Oh yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds like fun.
yeah, I'm pretty excited for it.
Um, I just, you know what? You and I are both part of the. I know I've mentioned this in other videos, but I'm going to be part of a that anthology Mosaic.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yep.
and so is Danny.
Yeah.
Like, is there, as much as you want to share, like
Hmm.
your contribution? I guess real quick for people if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's an anthology of short stories and I think poems. I think it's coming out the end of summer, and all the proceeds are going to like a literacy charity. And I wrote a story that's like very different from anything else I've written. Like it's this contemporary and that about like loss and all that. But you have a contribution too. Is it part of your world or is it something completely different?
Well, kind of spoilers, but I'll say it. Whatever. It is part of my world,
Okay,
uh, but different. It's
sure.
it goes into spoiler territories, but
Well,
again,
you don't
it's
have to
fine.
say, yeah, I just was
Let's,
curious if it was like something completely
mhm,
off the wall, like like I just
mhm.
said, I didn't write a Gamma Trita book story for it,
Yeah,
but I didn't know if it was part of your like Severance universe or something completely different.
yeah. It's part of the Severance universe. I'll leave it at that. But it doesn't follow any of the characters in any of the books that I have out right now or anything. It's a completely standalone story. But yeah, it takes
Awesome.
place there.
Cool.
Yeah,
I mean, well, I'm sure we'll both be sharing that more and more as it gets closer. I think it's, don't quote me on this, but I think they were looking at like August, September or something maybe for the launch. So not
I
that
think
far off.
so. Yeah, I'm excited for that. That'll be cool to be a part of. It is cool to be part of.
Yeah. How do you because I know you, I mean, obviously I met you through social media, Facebook, and now we chat all the time on the Children of Copernicus and Gamma Trita Discord channels.
Hmm.
But how do you go about promoting your books? I mean, there's social like we just talked about, but I know you do like events and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, social, Facebook. I've started trying to post more on TikTok and Instagram, and that's usually hit or miss. But then, yeah, like you said,
Sure.
events. I just did an event. Well, yeah, about a month ago at my local cigar lounge and uh, in a bookstore in Austin, and then I've got another one coming up in October. it's gonna be a pretty big event. I think 100 indie / self-published authors are all gonna be there. It's gonna be a big deal. So I've got that one. I booked that one out months in advance, and I hope to get some more in between there. But so far, or in between now and then, with some local bookstores and stuff. But I do want to delve into like the Facebook ads and
Me too, and I don't know
Amazon
enough about
ads.
it, but yeah, we'll have
Yeah,
to look at
yeah,
that one together because yeah, I saw like another Peter Wood just posted something about having some little bit of success from like a Facebook ad campaign. I want to look
yeah,
into that because yeah,
yeah. It's I think you have to have a very particular ad to
yeah,
work because they're very specific nowadays, and unless you get that right, it's a lot of trial and error. I think.
I think so. That's what I mean, I've done a little Amazon advertising, and it's like
Yeah,
then it'll start getting to be like you know I've spent 15, $20 and I've gotten one sale, and I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I think I gotta shut this off.
yeah. I've done the same thing before, like 15, $20, and I don't even know if I made a sale. It was like your ad generated 10,000 clicks. I was like, oh,
Yeah, but
cool.
like one sale. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, well, hold on, I got to tweak it a little bit. So
yeah,
cancel for now, and I'll come back to
I do
it.
that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wanted the majority of this video interview to be about you, but you have recently, in fact, I think as recently as yesterday or so, finished my trilogy, and I was
Hmm.
just curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed it. It was usually a different type of books than I read, but I really like the sci-fi settings. Like I know we have similar interests in Mass Effect and Cyberpunk, and I've read a handful of sci-fi books before, and they were all pretty good. But yours they're great. They're short. You almost like jump practically right into the action, and usually I like a slow burn. I like things to build up, but I really enjoyed just jumping in, getting introduced to Lorelei Ogden, and then boom, she's killing people. And you're like, why is she just killing people? It's like she's acting like she's good at it, but she's never done it before, and it builds up from there. And I really liked them. They're kind of. I know you've taken inspiration from the games I mentioned before, but
Oh
I
yeah,
I really liked the atmosphere in your books, the Gamma Trita trilogy. It was good. It was fun to be in.
good. I appreciate that, and yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I've said it a million times, but probably the game that got me to finish writing him was Cyberpunk 2077, which I know you play a lot too. And I don't know, there's something about that game. I mean, I think it's probably one of my all-time favorites. It's like you can just like there's times I'll just fire it up, get in the car, drive around, and like other than of course killing like gang members and stuff, just drive around, and it's like I'm happy doing that for like a session.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome how they made that because it's one location. You're just in Night City, but they put so much thought and like effort into it. It feels real almost. I don't know. It's like you said, I like driving around and just looking at stuff on that, the ads, the
Yeah.
building. It's yeah, it's fun. Despite the rocky start it had.
Oh my gosh. And that's the big, I'm glad the game has turned out to be like a huge success because I remember, I mean, I bought a Series X just to play it, which I think avoided a lot of the trouble because it ran for garbage on lesser systems. But so
Yeah.
I didn't really experience the worst of it, but I remember so many people are like, "Oh, I'm not going to support that game." And I'm like, "You're really missing out on something awesome if you can get past all that." But
Yeah.
I think they figured it out. They're making a sequel, which is cool.
Yeah, that was me originally. When it came out, I heard about all the bugs and just how shitty it was. I'm like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
buy it. And then what actually got me into it was the anime that came out on Netflix.
Yeah.
I watched that. I was like, damn, that's pretty good. I was like, maybe I will get that game. It's been a couple years. I'm sure they've patched it, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad I did. It's fun.
Well, if you're looking for decent reading too, they made one novel I think so far, and for in the cyberpunk world,
Mhm.
I think if I were to summarize it, it's probably about a 4-star book, but I gave it 5 because I listened to it on the audio, and they actually got the actress who did the voice for female V, and she just knocked it out of the park. So it's almost
Dang.
like a part of the game because the person you hear in the game is doing the book. I
Yeah.
don't know, it's pretty good.
Huh. That's
I'd recommend
cool.
it.
Yeah, I don't usually listen to audiobooks, but I might do that one if they brought in the voice actors.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Um. Yeah. So I mean, I guess like to kind of close this out, the usual. Where can people find you and your stuff, like your spiel on where to find all things Daniel Wiebe?
Yeah. So a Facebook page is called the Severance Trilogy, which just by the way got over 1,200 followers today. So
That's awesome.
hooray me and everyone who followed. Thank you. Uh, yeah, that's where I'm most active on that Severance Trilogy page. My books, The Shield, Blades of the Night, and Shadow of Malignant can all be found on Amazon, and then Blades of the Night and The Shadow of Malignant can also be found on a multitude of online retail stores as ebooks.
Awesome. And I would definitely recommend them. Like I said, I just to take this full circle. I mean, I was not a grimdark person before I met Danny and Haley, and their books made me a fan because I don't know, it just wasn't what I expected. I think you know, I dismissed it as like, oh, it's way too dark. I don't like overly dark TV shows or things. But I don't know. They didn't read like that to me. They like definitely get heavy, but they're not like this. Like, oh, this is never going to get better. These people are just all going to die at the end. Um, I don't know. There's enough hope to carry me through, and I enjoyed it.
I'm glad we could convert you.
Yes. I mean, I'm not going to be wishing death on everybody else's characters like Haley,
Yeah.
but you
Oh,
did convert me.
yeah. I won't do that either. You know, to each their own, but
Yeah,
I might kill some of mine.
yeah. And all I'm going to say is that I am solidly Team Iris.
I think a lot of people are. I'm happy to hear it though.
Yeah,
She's a good character.
yeah.
She deserves it.
Well, again, thanks for taking the time to do this, especially last minute. I don't know. It seemed like it went really great, and I think people are going to enjoy this. And as always, everybody watching, thanks for listening, and I'll do another one of these soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.